Hello and welcome to Shift Happens with myself, Matt Archer-Davis. I'm the founder and managing director of digital marketing agency, The Bright Click.
And I'm Sanjiv Dodia, business growth specialist with Action Coach.
What we're going to do at the beginning here is talk about the idea that most business owners don't have a growth problem. They have what we might call a design problem. The business grows and then traps them kind of within it. But they can become the busiest, most valuable person in the company, but also the most stuck person in the company. So everything routes through that person. The team is waiting for decisions. Growth equals more chaos and not more control. Holidays equals anxiety. Sanjiv, your take on that in the first instance?
Yeah, Matt, that's you surfaced the kind of symptoms you see. And the interesting thing is, you might think that this is just a challenge where you go from, let's say, a startup business to a micro, hiring your first people. But what I'm seeing with a number of semi-business owners I'm working with is it's a challenge with much more established businesses with, been around a long time, got a lot of people in the team, but still the owners, the leaders are stuck in the owner's trap, and they associate more growth with more pain, longer hours that they're already at the limits, taking on more pressure and taking on more stress. And it made me think, why is that? If you've been around for a while and you've got 10, 20, 30 people in the team, why is the owner so stuck in terms of the time challenge, the bandwidth challenge, and so on? And I think that's probably what we want to explore, because the answer is that there's several levels. First of all, it's the identity shift. We start a business, we're the technician, we're good at the thing that we do. When we start, we do all the jobs in the business. Then we hire people in the team, and we're managing people, but we're still firefighting. We're still jumping in, solving the problems. We're still interrupt driven. We're very reactive, very operational. So there's a couple of shifts that we need, right? From the technician to an effective manager, where you're getting results through other people and through the processes other people in your team operate, to manager, where I think the core concept is you need to stop being the business doer, doing several jobs in the business, to being the business designer, or if you like, analogy that comes to my mind is become the conductor of the orchestra, not hanging out in a number of the sections of the orchestra playing a whole bunch of the instruments, because you then can't see the wood for the trees, and we all know that that doesn't produce the kind of harmony you'd like.
So it's really interesting. We've talked at length the idea, for example, when sole traders, as you say, when you're the technician as a result. Most businesses start because you're good at doing something, right? And I think the examples that you and I have talked about a lot are the kind of the hairdresser who's cutting hair for a living, and then the hairdresser gets busy, so they take on another hairdresser, and then they take on another hairdresser, and then eventually it's time to step away from cutting the hair and focus on actually running the business. And that's the hard transition to make, and that's something that I know that you've coached regularly. But what we're talking about here is slightly different, isn't it? It's basically the idea that you've done that bit. You are now running the business. You're not the technician anymore, but somehow you're still getting pulled into the weeds, right? And that's because you haven't got the right systems in place. And we've talked a lot about systems. So when you're talking about being the conductor of the orchestra, or being the business designer, it's largely based on systems, right? And managing those systems.
Yeah, it's a good cue. Look, what I think happens, and why owners and directors get stuck, is because the business grows organically, not intentionally.
Yeah.
Processes live in people's heads. They're informal. The person that starts doing the thing, the process is sitting in their head, and it's not sitting in checklists and systems and software and well mapped out processes. The mindset is it's easier and quicker if I do it, and that becomes the default, rather than actually, let me take time to kind of map out the process so that I can systemize it and train it and delegate to somebody effectively. Hiring solves the symptoms, i.e. we're chucking bodies at the tasks and so on, but not structure. I think the bottom line is the growth without design ends up with complexity, kind of spider's web of activity and dependency on key people. The challenge is with scaling that. because you can scale processes, but you can't scale people.
Mm.
You scale processes that people run. So I think that's where they get stuck.
It's the idea, isn't it, that you don't necessarily need to build roles around the people, but that you build the roles around what the business needs. And that's a classic example, isn't it? Because again, when small businesses grow, and as you say, organically, naturally, you've got certain people in certain seats, and in some cases, you're going to have some square pegs and round holes, and in other cases, you're going to be having, as a small business, to even as a business owner, you wear a number of hats. Your team can end up wearing a number of hats, and then you end up building the business around the team, whereas you should be building the business around the systems and what the business needs, right? So in terms of systems, I know we've covered this load of different levels in the past, and there's lots of different ways of kind of looking at it. But I guess what you first of all need to do is work out what you can manage in terms of what you can track. What does a management system look like in that sense?
Yeah, I think actually, if we back up on
Mm,
that, maybe let's talk about the different layers of business design. If we're talking about this shift from
sure.
business to business design, because one of those key layers or levers is the management system. But
Mm,
that's
mm.
probably not necessarily the starting point.
Okay.
Right. First of all, I think, every business, your business, my business, every business is a collection of processes. We've got
Mm,
processes for generating demand. We've got processes for converting that demand, those leads into customers. We've got processes for fulfilling our promise to the customers, processes for collecting the money, then retaining those customers, and processes for hiring, managing, developing, and sometimes firing the people that drive the business. So if you think about it, in every business there's 6 or 7 core functions: marketing, sales, finance, operations, systems, people, HR, and supporting admin processes.
mm, mm,
So I think the first layer is systemize, getting it out of our heads, getting those core processes out of our heads and in a place where somebody else can follow them, whether they're in checklists or standard operating procedures or playbooks, lots of different terms and different tools for doing it, for checklisting and automating and so on. So I think first of all we got to have a picture of the end-to-end processes.
mm,
Then we got to move away from that spaghetti wire of people doing whole stack of jobs everywhere across the functions and start getting some process owners or functional owners. And in it maybe you may be at a stage, and I've got clients with now 5-10 million pound businesses where the MD is still wearing 5 or 6 different hats. So not only are the MD, but they're head of marketing because there's nobody else looking after marketing function. They're head of sales because there's nobody else looking after function. They're head of HR because nobody else is looking after the HR function. That's it, right? So let's see what that spaghetti wire looks like today, and what does it need to look like if this business is going to be scalable, i.e. which of those hats they want to keep because they're great at it, that they can play at their highest value doing that job, and they enjoy it. Because the rest, there's going to be a plan to let that go. So I think, first of all, getting those processes laid out. Secondly, identify who does what now and where the gaps are and
mm,
where what the transition looks like. Then you look at the structure. So roles defined, as you said, around processes, not personalities, so that you can map the right people onto those processes, those functions, and get clear ownership and accountability over time. So build roles around what the business needs, which means
mm,
there's a certain amount of transition, certain amount of evolution
mm,
required, maybe some recruitment. Then the management system. So what is a management system? That's your cadence of getting everybody aligned around what are our goals, what are our priorities, what are our measures of success, who's responsible for what, who's owning those different KPIs, financial, sales, marketing, etc., and to give us visibility of a performance. So the management system needs to track and measure that and ensure the follow up and the follow through. And we can get into the detail of how you structure that, as we carry on conversation. And then once you've got that set up, then you use that management system to identify where the improvements are going to happen, where the bottlenecks are, where the breakdowns are, where the disconnects are. Where are we losing money? Where are we losing time? Where are we losing goodwill? Where are we relying on individuals so that we can continuously, Kaizen like improve them? So I think those are the layers that we need to look at, and wrapped around that is the vision, the culture, the plan. But I don't think businesses, even though they've been going a long time, have thought about that intentionally enough, because they've just kind of evolved organically.
It's that kind of ability to stop and think and look at the business, right? Because unless you do,
Yeah.
then that organic, natural, holistic kind of thing just carries on, right?
Yeah.
And until you kind of stop and kind of look at that. So that all makes a lot of sense. One thing that resonated with me there as well is the idea that getting out of your head and writing it down. If it's not written down, then it's not scalable, is it? Like because you can't really scale something that's just an idea or just in your head or just a series of thoughts. Right, it's getting these things down on paper that then enables you to scale.
Yeah, well,
Essentially, right?
you're the hub. All the spokes are coming off you. Whenever anything needs to get done, it has to come back to you.
Mm,
You become the bottleneck. You are reactive because people can't take initiative and
mm,
own something. All the decision-making pressure sits with you. You're not
mm,
enabling and empowering and properly engaging people's potential.
mm,
So they don't grow. It becomes a really stressed out existence because you're micromanaging all the time, task managing, do this, do that, and so on. And that's critically the problem. And what's the answer to that? Well, you got to learn how to let go and systemize, train and delegate, stand back, move from being the operator to being the architect, if you like. Okay, right, let's
so,
have a look at this. How does this process work? What does good look like? Where do things go wrong? What's the outcome we're trying to achieve? What skills do we need? What knowledge do we need? What experience do we need? And start mapping those together. Only
mm.
when you start doing that do we see the shift,
I
right? And time is the usual excuse. Well, yeah, I'd love to do that, but I don't have time to do that, and it's a bit of a vicious circle.
Yeah, I can relate, because I think what's quite interesting, speaking, again, from within the business
Yeah.
or from within a business, if you like that, where we have a team, etc., is I can also see that there are bits within the business that don't need my support and don't need my help. And there are bits that do. And that hasn't always been the case, right? But when the bits where the business does need my help still, I can definitely be the choke point and I can definitely be the bit that slows that down or that doesn't happen. I also like, there are bits in the business where team members might say to me, Matt, can I get your approval for this? Matt, can we do this? Matt, is this idea okay? Or can you run through this? And they are generally going to be the things that slow down. Now, that's either because I'm prioritizing other things or time, as you say. But when we've got systems really well structured in other parts of the business that just happen and just flow, that don't need my input and don't need my support. If I was looking objectively at that, from a helicopter view, I would say that they are the parts of the business that actually are the most successful and are running the best and are delivering the best results. But I think that as business owners, it's very hard for us to put the brakes on, to stop and to understand that. So that's why I think that your coaching element here has been really important to me, because it's about knowing when to stop, when to sit back, when to take a look and say, well, actually, why does that part of the business work so well, but this part of the business doesn't? So it might be that there are some business owners who are trying to do everything or are completely in that, or that if you actually do stop and look at your business, you'll probably see that there are some things that are performing better than others, and that could well be because the systems are correct, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And I can think of so many examples. Let's think of an example. For example, if actually your challenge is lead generation, pipeline, and having sufficient pipeline coverage to cover your revenue and sales targets, I guarantee you that if you take a good look at the whole process, take lead generation, for example, or take pipeline development, you'll see a core challenge in that process isn't systemized properly, right? How many businesses do we know? You work with a load in this area as much as I do, where they have got really good handle on what's their target market,
Uh,
and they build a database of target market suspects that turn into target market prospects, and they have a
Mm,
good CRM, and the CRM has got all the intelligence around every prospect they've spoken to and
mm,
the intelligence of interactions they've had and engagement they've had, so
mm,
that they can nurture them over time into their funnel. And then when these people raise their hands, respond to some communication, say your weekly email or
mm,
an invite to something, and so on. When they raise their hand, that then flags that it's time to pick up the phone and speak to them. That's the process. If it's properly broken down and it's systemized, and we've got some proper ownership around it, then you wouldn't have necessarily the sales challenge that people quite often talk about, and the owner then gets sucked in to generating that demand and driving sales, because otherwise, they've got a challenge with delivering their budget. So, but if we were to step back from that, we'd have a clear marketing plan with, I don't know, three, four, five more different marketing tactics, testing and
mm,
measuring what each one is producing, do more of the one that's working with the best lead acquisition cost, lowest client acquisition cost, highest ROI, and do less of the other stuff. And then we move into the pipeline management, and then we move into sales conversion. But because so often it's owner dependent and individual dependent, never taken time to look at what would a great process look like? What does best practice look like?
mm,
How do we design and implement that for our business? And the longer you don't do that, the more and more kind of entrenched you get in
mm.
doing the lower value tasks, because you're not making time for the exactly that, the strategy and the plan and the design. I guess the question is, how do you break out of that? What do you
mm.
do to break out of that? I mean, should we speak about that?
Yeah, I think that is one of the hardest things to do, is recognizing that, as business owners, you do know deep down where where the issues are. You just might not, be taking the time to actually think about that. But we all know in our heart of hearts where the issues are in the business. What's interesting there, what you said about systems as well, is I would add another word to the mix there, which I think is rhythm, which
Yeah,
is it's about not only having the systems, if you like, there, but having that rhythmic nature of the systems that are cyclical almost, or like, whether that's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or whatever. But it's knowing that the rhythm of those systems is the heartbeat of your business, right? So
yeah,
you've used the sales and marketing example there. It's really good. If you've got if you've taken the time to systemize your sales and marketing output, and that becomes rhythmic, i.e. Thursday, your newsletter goes out. There's a background meta ad running. There's a background LinkedIn ad running. You're going to make half an hour's worth of sales calls a day. When you get into that rhythm within the system, then rhythmically you should be able to start to predict an output from it and potentially scale that output if you kind of want to from there, right?
exactly right, and really well put. So the two things go together, right? The process and the rhythm of the business running. If you were doing an hour or two of prospecting every day, 5 days a week, then we've spoken about this.
Mm,
Then that compounds, doesn't it? To start driving some really good impacts. If you're looking at your cash flow every week without fail, then you'll have a very good idea of what your cash flow is. If you're doing pipeline management on a weekly basis, if you're surveying your customers every quarter, every single process in the business has got a rhythm associated with it, some ownership associated, and that's a systemized business. Think McDonald's, think Amazon.
mm,
They're not dependent. These businesses aren't dependent on, well, who's doing it today or next week or whatever.
mm, mm,
They're well established processes, and they manage to delegate, the individual processes to relatively junior people,
mm,
because their
mm,
processes are so well defined, so well trained, and so well managed. So
mm,
I think the starting point, right, where I start with my clients, even the scale up clients, and I'm not talking about the micro businesses. Let's have a look at where your time's actually going. Let's do an
yeah,
audit of your time. And
yeah,
then let's map that time against what is low value work versus the higher value work. Where are you spending a lot of time doing the £15 an hour jobs versus doing the 100 to 500 to £1,000 an hour jobs? And let's cluster those tasks up into into a role that somebody else can take off you. So if you're an MD of a million plus pound business and you haven't got an assistant, a PA or an EA or a VA, that's probably the first place to start. They start managing your inbox. They start managing your calls. They start managing your diary. They start managing all the low level admin stuff that either you do reluctantly or badly or don't get done at all. Take that away and give you some space to think. Protect your time. Create some time which you can then start investing in the higher value activity that nobody else is doing. Starting with, well, what are we trying to achieve? What is the plan? Who is going to do it? What processes need looking at? Where are the bottlenecks in the breakdown? Start stepping into that. Start doing first of all the job of the manager if that's not being well managed, and then the job of the owner. So it always starts with brilliant book. I know you're going to ask me for a book recommendation.
I
Might
am.
as well say it now.
No,
Is
go for it.
Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. That's a
Okay.
really good place to kind of start to think about this. And he talks about doing a time audit, and then he talks about a concept called trim, which is the stuff you keep, the stuff you replace, as in you delegate, the place where you invest your time, and so on. So, and I talk about the 4Ds, the stuff you do because only you can do them, the stuff you can delegate, the stuff you should delete, and the stuff you defer to another time. But you start with that. Once you bought back your time, then it's a question of starting to put the plan together for the systemization, and then the plan for the who do I need. So we're thinking of the business as a machine, right? Not as a collection of jobs that we all run around.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. Yeah, sounds like a great recommendation. In terms of the book, Sanjiv, one of the things I was thinking here as well is that that it doesn't have to be perfect either, right? Like it's kind of like, you can, I think, just making a start, like a version 1 that you can then evolve, that you can then finesse, is a good place to start, right? I think that's, one of my favorite phrases is, perfection is the enemy of progress. I think so often you can knock something down the line, and it's still not done because you're waiting to get the perfect version of it. Whereas just making a start on this stuff, you said a few minutes ago, where do you start? Exactly that. Like, so I think taking one part of the business, having a look at the systems that are in place at the moment, if at all, and deciding how to get that bit working for you. You've got to start somewhere, right? Is ultimately it. Another thing that I thought was worth just in terms of closing up now at the end of this podcast, is the idea that your business will only grow to a level that it's designed to handle, essentially, right? If you don't design it, then you end up with a default version of the business, which is where you got to in the organic growth, right? You default back. You've used a phrase before. Remind me. It's something about that. You fail to you don't rise to something. You fail to the level of your.
Oh yeah, that's not me. That's James Clear. So you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fail to the level of your systems, right?
Yeah.
So you can be very ambitious about your goals, but fundamentally it's about he talks a lot about the habits, and habits in business are our processes, our rituals, our routines, what you said, the rhythms, right? So if we take care of that, then the compounding effect of that takes care of the achievement of our goals. So where do you start? Pick one function that currently is so dependent on you as owners, as the owner or directors, that when you step away, it doesn't happen. It fails. From basics like the invoicing that doesn't get done, or actually the prospecting stops. Whatever the function is, pick one function. Usually sales or delivery are a good place to start, and document the current way of doing it. It's not perfect, but it's what it is. Then turn it into some kind of checklist or standard operating procedure. Then think about who should be owning it, not you. Then what are the key metrics to track, and so on. Then do the training to transition the ownership to that person, and then put the management wrap around it so that they're reporting the results for quality, consistency in terms of delivering, and follow up and follow through that. Do that, and then pick the next one. But if we do that one kind of process and one person at a time, then over a period of 12, 18, 24 months, you can get the whole business covered. Then you can start on the work on streamlining and automating and improving those processes. Or if you haven't got the right person in the right seat, then either working on their development or working on their replacement. So I think it's about going about this systematically to build that sort of predictable, repeatable, sustainable machine.
Great stuff. All right, Sanjiv, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much. I hope everyone watching or listening has got some valuable information for us, some great nuggets from Sanjiv in there for sure. As always, if you do have any questions, you can drop us a line. Just drop us a comment on the socials and or drop us an email, and we'll be happy to come back to you. If you've got any ideas of topics that you'd like covered on this podcast as well, then please just let us know, and we'll be happy to cover those. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching and listening, and have a good rest of your day, and take care.